Hello and welcome back to the Future of Figure Skating. My name's Anna Keller, and this is an epilogue of sorts, or part two of my conversation with Sandra Bezic. We talked again after the World Championships when Sandra was feeling a little more optimistic about the future of the sport and some of the things that she'd seen there that inspired her. So hope you enjoy this part two and more conversation with the wonderful Sandra Bezic.
So here we are back again. I'm very happy to have Sandra Bezic back post Worlds 2024 to catch up on some of the things that have been going on in the last couple of months and our impressions about Worlds. So we can get right into it because I know you were watching the pairs event and had some thoughts about that. But yeah, so
yeah.
Where are we post? Yeah.
Well, where are we? I thought, and you were there and you experienced it, but I just thought the event overall just had such an energy that was exciting for North American skating, skating in North America, because it's taken a hit lately, and this was exciting, and I just thought it was a really exciting lead up into Boston as well, because maybe there'll be some momentum here. I mean, I'm speaking specifically about North America. Obviously, there's momentum around the world, but I just thought it seemed really exciting and really positive. And then there were so many stories. Wow. Which is what I think, in general, the skating public and the public beyond the superfan looks for and gravitates towards. And man, there were some good ones, led by Deanna. I mean, I do think that Deanna and Maxime really set the tone. Pair short program set the tone. They set the tone of the week. It was this sort of anything is possible tone, and I loved it.
That pair short program was so much fun, and we talked about this. I'm a huge pairs fan. I always feel a little sad when we start out the competition with an empty arena for a pair short program. And while this was not as full as it got later, it was not empty.
No,
that was really great. And it just felt like from the first pair that got on the ice onwards, everyone was really showing up, especially for the program. And even some of the teams, I was thinking, there are teams like the new Polish team, nobody has particular expectations for them. They went out there and they were fantastic in that short program. I think even that energy from that first group really helped.
Absolutely.
And build from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so often the pairs can crash and crumble, and starting that way was so fantastic. It made me sort of think, okay, well, maybe there is a corner turning here, in sort of pairs managing this system, because I've said to you before that I feel like the IJS system hurt, or the pairs struggled the most to make sense of that system and continue progressing. And so then I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong after the short program, but the short program is also a structure that's been around for a very long time, before IJS. So then when I watched the free program, I thought, okay, well, maybe there still are issues. And yeah, I do think there are issues. But just watching the top three pairs, the three pairs that made it to the podium, and their different stories and their different times in their lives. And I just thought that they were extraordinary. Each of them was extraordinary. And of course, topped off by Deanna and Max. And what fascinated me, I mean, yes, Deanna's story and, being 40 and all of that stuff. Yeah. Okay. We know, we get it. She's extraordinary. what I thought was a really amazing story was, watching Deanna's journey from the short program, Deanna and Max as a pair from the short program, and that performance, then, was it 24, 48 hours later? How did they live through that? How did she live through that? Thinking about everything that she had gone through in her entire life to get there. And now her biggest dream is at her fingertips. And she's got all this time to think about it. And which way that could go for any of us in our minds, right? And then watching her freeze in the warm-up, almost like she couldn't move. And then willing this gritty, powerful, emotional, raw performance. And then watching her face afterwards, because it wasn't the elation, that young skaters lighted up. It was this woman who kind of, was like, did that just happen? Did we just do that? Was that all these questions going through her mind? And just, my goodness, I mean, this was just the most amazing story. And it encapsulated kind of what people love about figure skating and why it's just been such an important sport for so many, for 100 years. So that's what kicked off Worlds. So, wow.
It makes me so excited to have that storyline to tell people about going into the Olympics and like thinking about what encourages people to watch, what encourages people to be into the sport. And there are a lot of teams and a lot of pair teams that I, would want to encourage people to be excited about their stories, but that is such an extraordinary one. Mm-hmm. And then the skating match, the skating is holding up to it, but then they're also up there against, we talked about Riku and Ryuichi, who in their skating is able to just sort of transcend and connect to people on this emotional level. And I didn't feel like I was pleasantly surprised by how well they were able to do here. And also it was clear they're not quite back to their best yet, but it made me think, wow, this is going to be so exciting to see these two teams and then to see the teams that are hungry and that are chasing them. So it's so many.
And the ones coming up who will be a year better, 2 years better. Yeah, Riku and Ryuichi, their performance was valiant. And I so admire how they got through this competition and also laid out their hearts and also didn't quit. And all things considered, they are the pair of the most cohesive pair of the competition, without a doubt. And they have a relationship on the ice that is unique to them. And so they were still in a class by themselves. They were not the winners. They were the winners of the long program. They were not the winners of the event, which is what competition is all about. But they were and are very much still in a class by themselves. And I just, I just really felt for them. And again, it was just another story, right? That you could feel through the screen, and it's great.
Yeah, and it was so fascinating for me talking to some of these teams that I'd been following all season and seeing, who had pushed so hard to peak at Europeans or to peak at their nationals or something like, and weren't able to pull it together here versus the teams were, I think in some ways, I think it was the best thing that could have happened to Minerva and Nikita, that they had that horrible fluke Europeans where then they were so determined to come in here and no. That was
That's not the way we're leaving the season. Yeah, no, and they're a lovely pair with a really great future. So exciting, and such a young team too together, right? So they've got a wonderful future, and a lot to learn about each other and how to deal with all of this. I mean, I think what was also really apparent to me was the difference between, and something that I feel like the rules forced inadvertently. I feel like the rules forced transactional relationships, where two people got together and then you've got your checklist and you have to do exactly what is required, and there's little room and very, very difficult, to find your individuality within that. And the essence of the pairs who were really rising to the top were the ones who were able to push beyond that, and for them to have a relationship that was beyond transactional and on the ice. And it doesn't have to be romantic. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but it has to be true to who they are. And I felt like those pairs were apparent. And I felt like a lot of other pairs, and it showed up in the free program, because that's, when you really have to, when there are just so many requirements and for such a long period of time, I just felt that somehow, I hope that with whatever new rules that come in, there's a way of eliminating such specific, minute requirements, so that it allows for more versatility, and it allows for the different relationships to really come through. Yeah. That's my wish for pairs. It's like everybody has to do. What makes me crazy is the footwork sequence into the twist. Now everybody does the kick, mohawk, twist. So not only does it slow down the speed for the twist, it sort of, everybody does the same thing in both programs. Who cares, right? I would much rather just see a pair fly in and make the biggest twist, the triple twist, or a quad, and just because that little footwork sequence proves nothing. Doesn't make one pair better than the other. It proves nothing. It's just check, we did that. So it's those things that I feel like in the pairs event that it would be really nice to strike them. I have my list.
Well, but that's a great point though, because so at this event, they were holding the coaches meetings with the singles and pairs technical committee, and there are a bunch of changes that are getting proposed. And I was talking to a lot of people about those changes, and it was very interesting because I think there was, maybe three opinions that were kind of floating to the surface here. One was, oh God, why are you changing the rules on us mid-Olympic cycle? Which was sort of, separate from content.
Needs it.
Were really
needs it.
Worrying about that. And the timing, and, can you choreograph your program now when you don't know whether, so there was a lot of
that timing, the rule changes should happen right now. Yeah. Because people are choreographing, hoping.
Right.
Assuming. And then if you have to go back in and change it, I mean, the rule changes should happen at Worlds, period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was very interesting. So, when we're talking, and I haven't seen the full list, I'm hoping to talk to a member of the technical committee this week and I'm working on an article about this for Anything GOE. And so hoping to, have a little more, a little bit more concrete what exactly is being proposed. But my understanding is that they're looking at taking choreo lift, choreo spin, having the options, maybe taking out some of the leveled elements and replacing them with choreo elements.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting because I was thinking, okay, so what will that, I'm in favor. I've been thinking about choreo elements, I think, ever since I first heard somebody, I think it was Megan Duhamel, tell me that thought there should be choreo elements in pairs. I kept thinking, oh, yes, exactly. This is what we need. The more I start looking at this and how choreo elements are judged when they exist, then I have my question marks about, will it produce the
right
they're looking for?
Okay. But don't you think, I think that by not opening it up to those possibilities, in order to judge it, in order to be fair, it actually then limits the pairs in a way that does not push the sport, that hurts the partnerships, because they're not able to be unique. They're not able to try new things because they're spending so much time filling out the checklist. And that's where then we become bored with it. And then the other thing is that, certain things like, I don't know. With the whole choreo idea, I think that's a step, but I sort of feel like the whole program should be a choreo element, and that we shouldn't be stopping. Okay, now let's get in the singles, your Ina Bauer and your spiral in these next 20 seconds because we've got to do a choreo element. But what if the music said that should be an Ina Bauer or a spiral, 45 seconds ago? So that as a choreographer, I go, but it still is a step in the right direction because it allows for more freedom, and individuality is what attracts the public. That individuality, and that combination of athletics and sports. And maybe the ISU is cluing in that, when somebody like Adam goes out there and, he broke a rule and took the consequences, but, did a backflip. It's like, how bad is that for the sport? It's great for the sport. I'm not condoning breaking rules, but, it's really good.
What people want is something that will feel unique and exciting, and and so I'm very interested to see what this is going to produce. I think one question that I have is, so what will the criteria be? How will these elements be defined? What are the minimum what are the minimum things going to be? Because that's where we've seen come up with those sequences.
Okay. But I'll be devil's advocate here a bit, because, and I know this is not practical for the competitive world as it exists right now, but when Dick Button had his pro competitions, I don't know if I'm repeating myself here with you, but he used to say, first number's technical, second number's artistic, but you need artistry in the first number. You need technique in the second number. You know what's good. You know what isn't good. Just, and make it 4 minutes or less. Those were the rules. And those produced some pretty darn creative pieces of work. And then, of course, you had, back in the day, the Brian Christie and all those people still out there doing their most difficult jumps and, 5 triples or whatever it was. And they were doing it because the skaters are automatically going to want to do the most they can technically and the most they can artistically if they know it will all be rewarded as a cohesive package. So
You
the
don't
more you break things down into little compartments, the more transactional and the less emotional and artistic it is. And that's where my issue is. And so, if Ilya, like you look at Ilya and his technique is art in itself, and that should be celebrated, and that's fabulous. But he knows he's got to continue to work on his components and all of that, just like the other guys know that they have to aspire to more quads. And I mean, we're human beings. We're just going to try and be better and better and better. So I think the analysis paralysis is what makes everybody seize up, and then it becomes boring because it all looks the same. So be careful. Be careful to put now these choreo elements into their own little box, because then we're just going to get a bunch of the same damn thing.
Well, see, you're not playing devil's advocate with me, but in fact, maybe I was with you, because I think I completely agree with that. And when I was saying that there's issues, I think where we've seen the issues are that when people have tried to be creative with choreo sequences and had them invalidated because they didn't include a designated element in them.
Exactly, which is like, no, just do something really great, and we'll know if it's great or not. Right? Like, you walk away from the pairs event, points aside, you know who wins. Like, we all knew who won, who came second, who came third. Same with the men. It doesn't, in the end, all those broken down points don't kind of matter as long as the right people end up on the podium. And that goes to honest judging. It's really refreshing to not worry about, block judging, I want to say, and just go, okay, everybody has their opinion, and you need all those opinions, and you're going to presume that they're educated and principled, and then boom. So the idea in ISJ or whatever, that they're not competing against each other, that they're competing against a point system, to me actually strips a little bit out of what can competitive skating can be.
Yeah, it's interesting in the pursuit of trying to make it be more athletically valid, and
quantifiable.
Athletically valid being defined as being quantifiable and being everything, having a numerical value associated with it, and having all of those things.
Right.
It's interesting because I was having this conversation about, is Ilya's PCS, too high or not? Like, which, it's a debate everyone's going to have.
Right.
And, I was having this conversation with another journalist who was pointing out to me, well, but look at that bracket that he's doing into this axle. Look at the thing.
Exactly.
And so you can point to, look at the speed he has, you can point to these characteristics that are checking the boxes. And I realized what I was saying was that I feel like his PCS shouldn't be that high because I don't get that he has a emotional connection to his performance. And that not really. I think he could be skating to absolutely any music and he would be doing the same performance. I mean, it's very exciting. So I do get the performance quality of the excitement of it. And that the audience is so into it, and that makes it for a great performance. So then you give him the performance points. But I think often but he's 19. Still trying to figure out where you would just like about skating.
Right. But if you see, I say, what do I like about skating on that night? Like, everybody aspires to that combination. That combination is the ultimate. But for the Olympics or Worlds or whatever, what about that night? his performance was inspired, and it was inspired for a whole bunch of reasons. But damn, he skated last. He knew what was, what was performed ahead of him. He had all that time, like all of those things. His performance emotionally just built and built and built, and then he, to this crescendo, he took the moment and the theater of the moment and made it his. Of course, his edges may not be as fine as someone else. And that's what he will aspire to. But in that night, and that goes to my point of who cares about the PCs, because they're going to change the rules, and who cares about world records? Like, who cares? Who was the best that night? Because this is a competition. It's athletics, right? So that's why, I don't know. But that's just my old brain, right? Looking at it and going like, don't tell me. I can feel it. I can see it. Don't tell me what,
And I will admit two things. One, I was not watching it from upstairs. I was watching from the mix zone. So I, for sure, some of the feeling of it. Absolutely. Okay. I'm sure that I missed some, that I might have had a different take on it. And I think, and I have no issue at all with Ilya winning.
Yes, no, I realize that.
Or any of that. I really don't want to take away from what he is doing, which is so amazing. I think, what I sometimes will look at is I think about this from a perspective of where do you go then if you are, there is a cap on PCS and there's no cap on technical. And so if a ski is awarded at very high on the PCS, there's, it becomes hard to view those as equal things that people can aspire to. One has a cap and one doesn't. And so that's where I think the feeling of it's less that we care so much about the world record and I'm say we here. I think there are people with a more extreme view than I do on this, but but there's I think it's less that we care about what happens on the night or that particular score than that there's a fear that this doesn't leave space for people who are trying to push things artistically. And you could argue that at Jason being very well rewarded here, you look at Dennis being well rewarded here, and then there's that example of the counter example, but that's, I think it's that inequality of how they're scored, and that where the cap creates that fear of where is this going.
Well, exactly, and that's no different than the artistic impression mark from, in history, because it's very hard to quantify art because it's. I mean, yes, there are absolutely elements that you look at, but then there's also the visceral, the feeling, the magic, and I've complained that there seemed to be no mark for magic, for that magic moment of that, that performance. So yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And maybe, I don't know, maybe there shouldn't be a cap, but or maybe the second mark should go to 6.0. But you see,
what are the options?
It's I still live in a comparative sort of mindset. To me, competition is comparing who should win and who should, and so I don't particularly pay attention to the numbers because I feel like they're a false construct.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to think about what a ranked version of some of these events might look like, judging wise, and how differently that might go. And there's a part of me that thinks I'm kind of happy that we now have the ability for Adam to have such an amazing performance and climb his way back up, and not to be, barred from the medals because of the disastrous short program. But
I agree with that. I agree. I mean, I think that the ability to move around like that is essential and wonderful. I really do. I mean, to know that that's possible and that he actually did it is great for the sport. So yeah, I agree. And so, I
was not up
through
again. I was not upstairs watching him, but I was downstairs with all of the French journalists, and them being so excited it was almost as good as watching it live, I think.
I bet. Yeah. And so, no, I don't have the answers. I just feel like sometimes we get so caught up in the minutia that we forget the bigger picture. And I think, ultimately what you want is for the performance to take your breath away, for each element to take your breath away. And if it's taking your breath away, that's got to count for something. And I don't know how to quantify that, right? So I don't know.
Wanted to ask you if there were any other performances that stood out to you, particularly from this Worlds.
Okay, so I didn't watch wall to wall. I didn't watch everything, and I didn't watch the dance at all. I missed the dance just because of my own personal schedule, and I haven't looked at it on YouTube. Several of the men I thought were inspired. Dennis, just gorgeous, and the young man from Estonia.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that'll be fun to watch. That career will be fun to watch. These gorgeous body lines with great technique, the wonderful potential. In the pairs event, the young Laurie Nichols' work with the young Chinese. I know that it wasn't a great performance in the free, but man, they have potential, and that's the connection, the choreographic connection, and the connection that I really pine for and miss. And that level above just looking at technique, especially in pairs. Who else? Remind me. The ladies event, and Isabeau is just so meticulous and not an easy competition for her. And yet she was just so composed and so true to herself and meticulous and precise and in such contrast, to the champion. I'm going to mispronounce her name now.
Cowrie. Yeah.
Who, man, cooler than a cucumber. Being able to handle a short program that didn't exactly go her way, but then just being so cool and knowing who she is and knowing what she can do. And she's such a natural edges and jumps and so not precise necessarily, and then Isabeau being, completely opposite. I just thought that was interesting for skating and wonderful to have on the podium. That's what I like to see, is that individuality. Who else? I don't know.
It's interesting that you mentioned Isabeau, though, because I had one person said to me that they thought that you should do choreography for her.
No, I think
the game of mixing and mixing and matching our ideal people. But
Well, I think her choreography is beautiful and perfectly suited to her, and you know, at least what she did at Worlds, and there's oh God, I mean, just I loved her, the way she ended, and then her reaction, you know, because she was so composed through the whole thing and precise, and then it was just.
She is adorable. I mean, not that I know her well at all, but just from the little bits that I've talked to her, she does such a fun personality and is so
charming.
Yeah,
I don't know her. Yeah,
and Carrie also, who I would love to figure out. I don't know what it looks like for her to bring some of her. She's so fun and funny and like is always playing with people and making jokes and so earth. I would love. I don't know what it looks like for her to bring that into some of her performances because I love her power also. But
but you know that's that would be an interesting challenge because her skating is powerful and big and you know full, and humor is short and staccato and or at least the way I instinctively react to that her person always you want to somehow find you know something within their personality to put into a program, but that humor might actually be against what her natural physical ability goes with. So I don't know. That would be a challenge. That would be a really interesting challenge.
Yeah. Her Matrix program where she kind of did the spiral almost toward the judges was a little bit that because it was breaking the fourth wall a little bit. So it had that like slight like, you know, oh, I'm cool thing to it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we were saying about Alien, whether, you know, the excitement of the performance, Kaori's free skate, seeing that live was just so wonderful and powerful. Such a, every time I watch it, I kept thinking I kept starting out thinking, wait, was that supposed to be a combo? Was that a mistake? Because she had backloads all of her combos. But then as it was happening, I was thinking, this is such a smart, composition and artistic choice as well as a point scoring choice, because by the end the fact that she can land a triple right at the end when the music's big, it's like you just want to be like,
of course,
to give you everything,
right? That's what you want skating to be, that feeling, right? Whatever that feeling she leaves you with, or some of those great performances, that's what you want. However, whatever their specific style is to get there. And, one just hopes that they continue to strip away requirements so that it allows people to find those in themselves. And new moves and new, I love seeing some of the new quirky choreo moves that the guys are coming up with, and the Ilya's raspberry twist and all. It's like, I've been around forever and I've not seen this before. And isn't that great to see something completely brand new, or certain things that I have seen before, but maybe not in a long time. Like, I can't remember his name now, the Estonian, his camel spin up on his heel.
Oh yeah, it's very cool.
Those little nuggets to me are worth so much, and I hope they're rewarded in one way or another. So I don't know. I was really inspired by everybody. And I hope that creates momentum, because it's so easy to get, cranky about it all. It just sort of depends on the lens you have.
That's great though. It's such a good way to leave the season feeling, if you can feel inspired and feel like there were things that make you excited, then that's what we all want.
Yeah. And just to really appreciate what they all put themselves through. And I do hope the rules go through in sort of paring things down a bit, because which will allow for more creativity, but also it will protect bodies. I just think that physically we're in such danger of these, athletes just succumbing to injury because of the demands that are placed on them and how hard they push themselves. And again, it's all about balance, isn't it?
Yeah. And we did our post Worlds recap for Anything Jewies with Corey Cercelli, and he was we were all saying, well, this person was injured, and he said, hold on, everyone is injured, everyone has some story, everyone is over, not everyone's sharing it, and not to say they should share it, but everyone is overcoming something,
and that's not good. That's an issue.
Yeah,
that's an issue. That's not good. And they also, they've got lives ahead of them that have to be considered. The women's backs and the Bielmans and all of that. It's a concern. And it continues to be a concern. And it really is up to the coaches and the parents to really protect their kids, protect their students. And not, we're human, we want to push the envelope, but there's a smart way too, I think.
I talked to Kirsten Moortower. It's fun. We got to watch one of the practices together while she was researching for her commentary, and she was telling me about her juvenile and novice teams that she's working with, and how she wished that they could compete with just a sort of zero twist, just a pop, because some of her teams are not ready for a single twist, and it's better for them to just take it out and skate the program without it. But that really had to learn how to explain that to the parents that were very resistant about that idea that they wouldn't do it, and that what a proper development pathway is. And she was confident in knowing that that was the right thing, but then learning that there was so.
Yeah, I totally see that. And I do feel that pairs need to slow down in their development, that in the end, they will catch up just fine if they learn all the basics as solidly as possible, and, and have, and learn that synergy between two bodies and really know each other, so that when you put your hand out, the other hand is there. And that, like things like, which, another one of those things that drove me crazy was the triple into the double axel, which most of the pairs couldn't do, should not be the program. If you can't do it cleanly every single day, it should not be there. And then, at opposite ends of the rakes, it's like, what kind of pair skate? What does this prove? It proves nothing. And it mostly just sets the program off on the wrong foot. So it's really about the coach holding strong and pushing back when there is that push from the parents or whomever, or the federation of, more is more is more. No, you've got to learn these things one step at a time, and you've got to trust that. You've got to trust that it will pay off in the end.
Yeah. Oh, well, I am feeling somewhat optimistic coming out of Worlds. It was a hard, weird experience in some ways, because we were also covering all of the stuff with Sorensen and all of the things that were going on there. But the skating was really very exciting, and there's that whole back on the ice too.
Yeah, the other side to our sport, but also, society.
Yeah.
And that spills over to our sport. And yeah, I confess that that's also one of the reasons why I just didn't want to watch the dance event. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to.
It was hard for me to watch the Montreal coaches who I've had a lot of respect for and, have interviewed and everything be so supportive of him. And I know that it's hard for when people have, somebody personally, you don't want to believe the worst of them, but that was very hard to watch the rallying around.
Yeah. We all sort of, I get the legal ramifications of not allowing him on the team and that, but I would be very uncomfortable, I think, continuing to work if there's any question. Whatever it is. And I've worked with pairs who, there was even the slightest bit of physical abuse. And that was it. It was over. It was done. I didn't care whether they were in contention or not in contention. It was like, no, this is not happening on my watch. I know this is a more complicated situation, but I would be very uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it was a shame just in so many ways, including that it takes then away from everybody else at that event.
Well, that's the thing.
Piper and Paul's free dance was so amazing. I loved that so much, and there were so many other teams that I very much enjoyed. And I know nothing about ice dance, so I just go in based on what moves me. But there was a lot that was wonderful, but it did have that shadow for it.
Yeah, and it's not right.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Sandra. It's great to get
Thank you
in your opinions on all of this. And
thank you. Yeah,
leave it back in with the other conversation, but it'll be good.
Okay, well, whatever. It's just fun to actually speak with people who are there and witnessing it. It's just I thought it was exciting, and my hat's off to all the skaters. They're phenomenal and should be celebrated.
Thanks again to Sandra for joining me in conversation. I've made a playlist of a few of her choreographies that's accessible on our YouTube page at The Future of Figure Skating. You can follow Sandra on Twitter and Instagram at Sandra Bezic. Her website is smbcreative.ca. You can reach me with comments or suggestions for topics and people I should talk to by email at fsfuturepodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram and Twitter at FutureFSPodcast. If you appreciate our work, you can also support it with a tip jar at futureofigureskating.pinecast.co. Remember to subscribe to The Future Figure Skating on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with your friends.